One of the issues that was raised by Senator Grassley, and we've certainly heard repeated over, is the response to the zero-tolerance policy of the Trump administration. It's my understanding that President Biden's interagency task force on reunification of families identified 3,914 children separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border between July 2017 and January 2021, when President Trump left office. Of these, 2,073 have been reunited with their parents through previous court orders and via the efforts of this task force. That leaves approximately 1,800 children who were separated during the Trump years, who, according to this task force report, have not been reunited with their parents. What is the current status of these children?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your question. I had the opportunity to actually interview parents whose children were ripped from their arms under the prior administration, and tragically, the trauma of that separation, even though they are now physically reunited, continues. I lead that task force, and we have a wonderful executive director who works day to day in the effort. We have taken quite a number of measures to reunite the families who were separated under the prior administration. We recently launched a website where families who were indeed separated can register for relief. We are working very closely with counsel for the families. We are working with the governments, the nations of origin, to accelerate the provision of passports for parents who do indeed want to come here.
So let me ask you, Mr. Secretary, you've heard the criticism that you're doing exactly the same thing that Trump did with zero tolerance. Are you, in fact, forcibly separating children from their families without good cause?
Absolutely not. And let me also say that we are working with international organizations, including the International Organization for Migration, to work with trusted voices to rebuild the trust of the parents that the prior administration destroyed, so they have the courage to come forward and be reunited with their children.
Mr. Secretary, you know my interest in the DREAM Act and Daca, as well as DAPA, and the efforts that Congress has been involved in. We had court decisions on President Trump's effort to eliminate DACA protection for the thousands who received it. What efforts is DHS making to reduce the backlog of Daca renewal applications? At the end of June, I understand 84,000 requests were pending, including 13,000 renewals for more than 120 days. What are you doing about it?
Mr. Chairman, our efforts are well underway in that regard. We are prioritizing applications based upon their expiration date so that we make sure that no lapses in deferred action for childhood arrivals eligibility occur. We are also, when we renew an application, we are making it effective upon the date of expiration so that there is no gap in eligibility of those.
So what's the backlog now?
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to get back to you on the precise number of that backlog, and I will do so.
I hope you'll do it promptly.
We have worked very, very vigilantly to reduce it.
The phrase catch and release is used by your critics to suggest that some people who manage to get across the border and make some claim to have a right under asylum law to be in the United States are released and never seen again, that they are somehow go into the nation at large, don't show up for their hearings, and that it's worse now than it was under the Trump administration. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, the term catch and release has been used very loosely for many, many years across different administrations. Individuals who are not removed, who are not expelled under the CDC's Title 42 authority are placed into immigration enforcement proceedings. Those who abscond are a priority for removal under the immigration enforcement priorities that I issued on September 30th.
Do they show up at their hearings?
The great majority do, Mr. Chairman.
And are there conditions that you can suggest would make it more likely that they show up at their hearings?
And we are imposing those conditions, Mr. Chairman. We have alternatives to detention for those who are not in immigration detention. We have imposed conditions of parole with alternatives to detention, and those conditions better assure their appearance in court. We are communicating with individuals most effectively because sometimes It is not an intent to abscond, but a misunderstanding of the requirements in a very labyrinthian immigration system. But we are really focused on this effort.
Another one of the Fox greatest hits are that you don't do COVID-19 testing, and that in fact you're turning these migrants loose at our border without a test, and they are spreading COVID-19 across our country. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, we test migrants. We place them in isolation or quarantine as the results of those tests require. We have built an architecture with non-governmental organizations and across the federal enterprise to test migrants. And in fact, when non-governmental organizations assist us in that effort, we have provided for FEMA reimbursement for them through the states if those states cooperate with us.
We know that smugglers are endangering and exploiting those migrants who are anxious to find a better place to live. We saw that just recently in Del Rio, Texas, when so many Haitian immigrants seemed to appear almost by design, tens of thousands of them. How did they happen to all come together during that period of time?
Mr. Chairman, we have a number of efforts directed at tackling the smuggling and trafficking organizations. Operation Sentinel is one of them, where we are going after their logistics and watching the money and apprehending them that way. I have met several times with the Attorney General of Mexico and assisted in the apprehension of organizational leaders. We are very focused on the organizations that exploit the vulnerable and facilitate irregular migration and illegal crossings.
My last question, what is the backlog in our immigration courts? I understand it was 1.4 million cases at the beginning of the Biden administration. Has there been any progress made?
There has been modest progress, Mr. Chairman. This is something that we are very focused on. This has been an enduring challenge. It speaks to the fact that our immigration system is broken and in dire need of legislative fix.